you lived to 89 and you lived every day of your life to its fullest, whatever that meant in that day, right? Like, would you be okay dying at 89 as opposed to 125? And I think that that's what we're pushing. Like, why do you want to live to 145? Like, what does that do for your life? And we're like just keeping people alive and they're not truly thriving. Like, I'd rather thrive to 90 or 80 or, like even 75. Like, yeah, that sounds young, but like, I don't know. I'd rather really enjoy my life and show up and be present and like have this great work-life balance and like just be fucking happy.
Welcome to another episode of the Limitless Life Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Smith, and if you have not done so, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. And if you love this podcast and you want some more tips and tricks on how to improve yourself, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are a ton of instructional videos there. You can find the links down below. However, my friend, before you go about doing that, I would like you to stick around to listen to a conversation between the Melissa Curtis and me.
Thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So
the question that I like to
get started with, folks, the question I like to start people off with is pretty simple. How is it that you impact the lives of the people around you?
Oh, I love that question. I thought you were going to ask me, who am I? That's what you like. Most people kick off podcasts. So like, well, where do we start there? How do I impact the people around me in my life? I have a mantra that I work with that is, my energy is contagious. And I really live by that. I believe that it starts with me. So I'm impacting people around me by taking care of myself, by making sure that I can show up as the woman, the mother, the wife, the coach, the friend that I want to be. I do that through a plethora, and we can dive into, self-care habits if you want, but I do that through really, dialed in, 99% of the time, dialed in healthcare and self-care habits, and really making sure that I have the time, the space, the energy to be able to show up for you and hold the space that I want to be able to hold. So
I like that. So for energy to be contagious, you must have caught a case of the energy. Tell us about that little journey. How is your energy contagious? Did you develop it? Was it something that you had inherently just from the day you were born, or is it something that you developed over time?
Well, when I say contagious, obviously that can be positive or negative, hard, ugly. It can be the shadow side as well. I do believe that I do tip closer to a higher vibration. I'm happy most of the time. I can see the positive in a situation before I see the negative. I think it comes a lot from my childhood. I had a pretty good childhood. As I grow up now and I spend more time with my parents as an adult, there are definitely some things that I am stopping with me. There are definitely patterns that I'm unraveling. But for the most part, my childhood was great. And I was able to sit in being grateful for what I did have, and just being an overall happy kid, happy person. And that's carried with me for sure. And then, becoming a mom myself, I truly understand what that means. Like, my energy is very contagious. It does either pull us up or pull us down. So being very mindful around that. And I've always been told that I have a very calming, safe, approachable energy. So there's been many times in my life where I've been in a group of people and, the homeless guy on the train will come over and sit down with me and be like, hello, can I tell you about my life? Or, even just when I owned a gym for a long time, and I did the nutrition and lifestyle coaching for the gym. And for a long time, people, we would start with nutrition and lifestyle, and then they'd be like, hey, can I talk to you about what happened when I was a kid? Or can I talk to you about my relationship with my husband? Or so people just have naturally over time kind of opened up to me. And I believe that's because of the energy that I put out, that I am not judgmental, and being able to hold that from a loving place. So, yeah.
I like that. I like that quite a bit. It's really good.
Yeah.
So what have you found? So you had that. Have you honed that energy over time? So if you had the energy earlier on and it was good while you were a kid, as you've gotten older and wiser and you've had more experience, have you been able to take that energy that I would imagine would be closer to a shotgun and kind of dial it into more of a sniper rifle?
I would like to think so. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I have leaned in professionally, using the energy that I do have, and, created skills and actual knowledge around those things. So the coaching that I do now, I went to school to be a teacher. So I have always kind of lived in this role model, teaching, holding space type of role in my life. So yes, over time, and going to school for those things, and then I've been on a self-discovery journey
Nice.
for close to 4 years now, and really, really looking at what are the patterns. I believe that we are born as close to perfect as we can get, right? And life just hands us chains that we just add to our neck and add to our neck, and it's like, and it's just weighing us down. And if we can take, this self-limiting belief, or this story, or this, or whatever, something that society has given us or our parents told us, like, we can unchain ourselves, right, and release some of those things. That's what I feel like I've done over the last few years, is really like allow my true self to show and to continue to shine. I think I know that there was a lot of people-pleasing tendencies and perfectionism tendencies and things that I acquired over time, whether from my childhood or otherwise. And I think some of that energy, some of that light was being dimmed because of those things. So I would like to think, yes, especially in the last 4 years or so, that I've really honed in on who I am, being proud of who I am, being truly like in love with who I am, and being able to show up in that way. So
I had a couple that popped up there. Okay. So the last 4 years, is there a moment or an experience that's at the forefront of your mind that really stands out as a moment that really was a big catalyst for that pivot?
Totally. Well, I'll go back. My daughter's 8. My oldest daughter's 8. And becoming a mom really was a pivotal point for me. I took pregnancy and growing a human very, very seriously. Where I was like, I have the opportunity to create like life from like start, like from a seed, So I was very intentional about what we did. My husband Chad and I were very intentional about how we were going to raise our kids, what the big important things were, whether it was religion or education or how we were going to talk to them. And that has definitely evolved over the years. There are some things like I wish I knew 8 years ago. And you can only know what you know, right? But really looking at, that was the kickstart to like how to be, I think I was just kind of going through life, like showing up as who I thought I was. And when I became a mother, it became intentional. Like a lot of the things, I'm like, why am I making these choices? And why does this matter? I became much more intentional. And then I started doing medicine work. So I sat with MDMA, And that was my first medicine ceremony. And that was like beyond like marrying my husband, having my children, like that's like top 5, like major life moments that I'm so grateful for. I was able to, that's the first time that I really was able to sit with myself and unravel how I felt about myself and where those things were coming from. Like I realized how much of what I felt about myself, the negative things I felt about myself, were not actually mine, right? They were just given to me, right? They were things that passed down from generation. I mean, I can track it to like 5 generation of women, you know? And I was able to unravel a lot in, I don't know, 12 hours, 10 hours, however long felt like 2 hours, but it was like 15 hours. But yes, that beyond getting, you know, having my daughter, that MDMA ceremony, and then the number of ceremonies that I've done after, but that one was like I could have ended there because that was so impactful for me. It was like things I said to myself, things I wrote in my journal that I've never even thought about writing before, never even thought about. So, yeah.
Something that's really cool with there was a Netflix series and it had psilocybin, MDMA, LSD, and peyote as the main medicines they were focusing on. And I've never used MDMA in a therapeutic sense, more in the recreational sense, you know, music festivals. And I will actually say from a music festival standpoint, I didn't drink really anything during that day. One, I didn't have any desire to. And I think that was due to the MDMA. But 2, the beers were like $7 per, and I didn't want to pay that. But one thing that I found, like, you know, you would definitely be familiar with this, but when you go into a room and you feel like, ooh, the energy's down, or ooh, the energy's really high, like in a good way, or it's really abundant or scarce energy.
Yeah.
Going to a music festival and partaking in an MDMA, and I can tell you that I was not the only person there. And it was like amazing where it was a crowd of people, but I could feel so much affection. Like it was not the same as going, and I've gone to a bunch of music festivals and like more like rock ones, and there was a lot more drinking involved in those ones. And it's interesting. I don't think it's the types of music, and I think it was actually more so the alcohol to the MDMA comparison that I'm thinking of, where it just felt so much better. It felt like so much love. It was like there's a whole cloud of people just like dancing in the sunshine while loving it. So that was my experience with it, not from a therapeutic sense, but from the show. And I'm going to ask you if it was kind of a similar idea with your experience, but with this show, it was therapists and medicine practitioners that were with the client, and the client said something really cool that stood out. And I didn't get to journal with the MDMA one day, but he said that he was able to look at the things he normally wouldn't want to look at because it would bring him great sorrow. But because of the introduction of the MDMA, which I believe hits serotonin most often, where it's serotonin, it's like the love, it's known as like love drug. Like it's like, gets that going. He was able to look at things from a place of love rather than the torturous kind of self-flagellating kind of style where he wanted to do something about it, but he just couldn't allow himself or grant himself permission to dig into it until that the MDMA was introduced to help with therapy. Do you find that that's what happened, is that you were able to look into yourself, into the things that you didn't want to address previously, and then you were just able to freaking, I don't know what the sound effect means.
Yeah. Rocket ship. Totally.
Perfect.
Yes. So MDMA is a huge serotonin flush. You actually have to, like if you do take a higher dose, you have to replenish with 5-HTP the few days after because of how big the dip will be, because of how much serotonin is being flushed into your body. And what MDMA does specifically is shuts off the amygdala. So you are able to see things with less or no judgment, right? So it is similar to what we're trying to get, the effect of story work, where we're giving that story space, we're giving that experience space, and we're able to see it. So what I was able to witness in myself was all of the thoughts, all of the beliefs down here, and I was up here, and I'm looking at them, and I was able to parse them out and really evaluate, like, where did that come from? Why do I feel that way? Do I actually feel that way? Is this story serving me? Is it worth keeping around, right? Like, I was able to have 10 hours of conversation with myself around specific beliefs about myself. And not only with yourself, but no, I've never been in a room, and this was a pretty big ceremony. It was like 30 people and like 5 facilitators. Like, there was a lot happening. And there was things shared that, like, if you said to me, like, hey, Melissa, I used to do this, like, at a barbecue, I'd be like, huh, you're an asshole. No, not like, no. Like, I don't even know how. And no judgment. I mean, I went up to people afterwards that shared like stories about like hard things that they've done. I mean, one guy was like, I realized in this ceremony that I've been overstepping lines with women for years. I have been, like, not necessarily raping them, but like, I have been pushing boundaries for years and not listening to no's. And again, if you said like, hey, I want to talk to you about what I've been doing with women, and that's what he said to me at a barbecue, like, I would have a lot of judgment around that, but I was able to sit and say, oh my God, thank you so much for opening and sharing about that. That must have been really hard. Like, can I give you a hug? What are you going to do now? Like, totally different. It's totally different experience. So I highly recommend it. Now since I've done some things recreationally, but prior to going into any ceremony, I had never done anything except smoke weed. So I experienced all of these things first in ceremony, which I think was the perfect route for me. Because it was, I was able to experience the big shifts, and then I was able to learn how to play with them, right? Because I think there is a great benefit, like you said, like Chad and I would microdose psilocybin and go on date night, and our conversations are like through the ceiling, like our connection like is awesome. And do I think we could have gotten there without psilocybin? Sure, but it just is that little like, then we don't need that glass of wine, or you don't need any, like, it's just, you're there and you're like walking for hours just talking about, I mean, you talk to Chad, it's very philosophical. But yeah, so it's, I highly recommend it.
Nice. Yeah, I would, that's one of my bucket list items is I do want to find a way to, or not find a way, but I want to develop enough experience and competence and confidence in my competence and being able to utilize it in like my own programs. Cause I think it's so, actually the way I kind of ponder it is that it's interesting when it's like we're really just floating on the top of the iceberg, but then it's like sometimes when there's psilocybin or there's I haven't done DMT yet, but that's on my bucket list, or MDMA, or even practicing when you're just smoking a joint or something, and there's the intentionality behind it. Since Richmond, I've been a lot more intentional with my use, not in the different changing in like usage, but the intentionality of like, I'm taking a second to think about the question that's in my mind or the lesson that I'm excited to learn.
Yeah.
And I look at the joint and I'm like, I call the joint great grandmother ganja because there's just a lot of G's in it. So I just like it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, great grandmother ganja, help me with this, teach me this, help me, or something along those lines, advise me. What is it that you're seeing that I can't see? And I think when there's that intentionality where it's not an avoidance, It is a going into. I think that the intentionality behind the consumption of anything is what will really play the biggest role in the trajectory of someone's life.
Totally, totally. And I think that there's a spectrum for any of these things, right? Like we talk about dopamine, and I think dopamine gets a like negative rap because a lot of times it's like, I want this fast dopamine hit and I want to like, and a lot of times it's that disconnection. It's like, I don't want to face this, so give me this, right? But when we look at some of these experiences, like we want to feel something. And whether it's alcohol or weed or psychedelic, like I think that there's a spectrum of all of it, right? So you can, start drinking at 9 a.m. and be so disconnected and not want to face your life, or you could have an intentional glass of wine with your wife by the fire and like connect beautifully, right? Or you can, take MDMA and go like and not be intentional about it, or you can be intentional about it. So same thing with cannabis use or any of these substances, right? Like I have gotten so intentional with the use around them that even when they are for play or recreation, or I'm looking to like, even if I am looking to disconnect, right? Like that's my intention. Like at least I'm aware of it, right? Like, okay, I don't want to talk to my kids anymore. They're sleeping. I'm going to scroll on my phone. It's an intentional, like, even if it's something I don't want to do, even if I know it's that fast dopamine hit, if I can at least say to myself, I know I'm doing this right now, or I see myself, or like, yes, I've had a hard day and I'm standing in the cabinet and I'm eating cookies right now. I see it. I feel it, right? Like it doesn't necessarily make it go away. But I think if we can bring intention and awareness to everything, then that's the first step to any of it, right? To changing any of it, or at least accepting it, or changing the story, or so I love that. I love that you have more intention around it and that you're seeking out that's what Chad and I would do. Like, yes, I'm using, because in any sense of the word, like all of these things are drugs, right? Like potentially to how you're looking at it, right? Or how society is looking at it, right? So like I'm taking mushrooms and I'm going on a date with my husband. Like on paper, people are like, you guys are just doing drugs together, right? Or even like ceremony. Like we had friends that, Chad would, do drugs with when he was younger. And he's like, well, now I'm going to ceremony. And they're like, no, you're just sitting in a basement, like taking drugs with people. And it's like, no, there's like a very big, like difference in tension around this. And we're like creating that space. And I know that like some people are like, well, you're just calling things medicine to make it sound better. And yes, sometimes I think, but I think it all comes back to that awareness and that intention. And so I think that's awesome that you're doing that.
Cool. Something that Chad actually brought to like when we were hanging out, and he was talking about that book. I'm pretty sure you know it, but the book where this guy just tried out all these drugs, and he's like, oh yeah, and he's like,
oh
and
yeah,
he knows his stuff. Like he
Yeah.
did this as like an experiment, and Chad was talking about the book and how he was trying all these different things. And what kind of popped up after I kind of ruminated on it a little bit is I kind of came up with this overarching idea of how I would define medicine. And I would define medicine as the alleviation of an ailment or a particular sense of state.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my mind, I would put like caffeine. I'm not drinking a non-caffeinated one today, but I would put caffeine under this point of like medicine. It is also rooted in plant as well. I would even in some cases put alcohol as a form of medicine because people are utilizing it to alleviate an ailment. And that's the thing that I think is interesting because it all loops back to that intentionality, because if we think of prescription drugs, which apparently are okay because they're prescription, but people still abuse them all the time. But they're not looked at as abused or as bad for you. But then you see someone who has clearly recovered from an injury that was from 3 years ago, and they were prescribed opiates, and for some reason they're still on them 3 years later.
Mhm.
And then there's not the indicator of them needing it or it being a requirement for them to truly like heal past it. They like the opium, right?
Yeah.
And I think that medicine is the resolution of an ailment that we feel or experience or sense, or it's just the alleviation of something that we just don't want it, or not don't want to, but it's just helping to cure, quotey fingers, cure something in us temporarily. And I think it's the intentionality that allows that curing to prolong for a lifetime rather than a daily or weekly unconscious,
Mhm.
either by choice or unconscious, or either by choice adopting it or unconsciously adopting it, where we just continue on going through. And it's interesting because it's like when you notice that people are utilizing something to heal something within themselves, the tendency to use more often decreases, I think. And I'm just kind of like spitballing this as I'm thinking about it, like on the fly, but yeah, it's pretty interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, for sure. The book you're referring to is How to Do Drugs Like a Grown-Up, by Dr. Carl Hart. And he's I believe he's a Stanford professor, or Harvard. I don't know. He's a high level professor and scientist. And he will do like heroin with his wife on date night. And it's an interesting concept, and it pushes a lot of boundaries for me specifically, because I feel like I've been conditioned to think about certain substances in certain ways. And that's potentially unfair. So it's an interesting read. And at a minimum, it gets you to think outside of maybe where your comfort zone is with substances. Yeah.
Absolutely. I like how you said unfair. Like it's unfair in the sense of having, correct me if I'm wrong, but I really like how you said unfair for that one, because it would be unfair in the sense of something having a possible really good use, but then having a not so positive narrative around it. So it discourages folks that may consciously understand that they could resolve something or help mitigate something, but because of the story, they're incapable of granting themselves permission to dive into it. So it's unfair for the narrative. Yeah, okay. Is that kind of where you're going with?
Well, I mean, it could be. Where I was going was like my personal opinion about these things. Like, I've never done heroin, and I also have a societal like opinion about what types of people use heroin, what it's used for, what happens to people when they use heroin. So like, it's unfair for me because this man is professional, he has a job, and he's able to use it in a way that I'm using mushrooms, I'm using psilocybin, right? He's taking small doses of heroin and he's connecting with his wife on date night. So who am I, right, to say I have no experience with heroin? So who am I? It's unfair for me to have that opinion. It seems like just an uneducated opinion to me. Like, I feel like I have that opinion because it is something that society gave me. It's not truly mine, and I'm not sure I have one at all,
Totally fair.
Yeah. So
cool.
That's what I meant by unfair, but I also think your version is also very true. Yeah, where people like, also because we have been so conditioned to like put different substances in different boxes, right? Like, alcohol is wildly accepted, right? It's totally okay if you drink every day, no one says anything to you. But if I did mushrooms every day, people have opinions about that, right? Like, so there's just the fact that I've ever done psychedelics, like, I can't talk to certain people in my family about it, but like can down a bottle of wine at Christmas, no problem, right? So it's interesting, the opinions that we formed about specific things. So yeah.
what is an opinion that you held for a long time but recently shifted?
Oh, like about anything?
If something comes to mind, but yeah, anything works.
I had a misunderstanding. If we want to stay on this topic, I had a misunderstanding of what psychedelics and this kind of work could do for anybody, right? I thought that there was a very specific population of people that this would, like, because I was reading about like studies that were being done with veterans or very traumatic experiences, or so I thought that I didn't realize how effective it would be on just simply changing your mindset. Like, even if you don't, like, I'm not unraveling super traumatic experiences, but I am completely rewiring the conditioning, the self-limiting beliefs, the like expectations that I've gotten from other people than myself. And so I had a belief that, well, I had two beliefs, honestly. I had a belief that I didn't really need it, right? And no one, I guess, needs it, but I didn't know how helpful it would be to me. And I think the bigger belief underlying was that I was not worthy enough to take up space in a ceremonial setting because I did not have as deep of traumatic experiences. So I thought that if I was taking up a space in those experiences, that someone that could really use it would not be able to get in, right? Someone that had a traumatic experience, that would be truly beneficial. And I completely unraveled that because it has changed my life. It's changed everything about my life, how I talk, how I speak, how I show up as a person, how I show up as a mom, how, like, literally everything, how intentional I am about, like, I'm very, very intentional. And if you see me doing something that seems out of character, I've chosen to do it. Right? Like, most of the time I eat healthy. If you see me eating cookies, I'm actively choosing to eat cookies, like I know exactly what I'm doing. When I'm yelling at my kids, even though I try my best to be gentle parent and do all of that, like, in the moment, I may not be able to fully stop myself, but in the back of my head, I am consciously talking to myself. Why are you doing this? This is not how you want to parent. You're dysregulated. Go take a breath. Like, I am very aware. This has made me super aware of everything in my life. And I think I always was, like, underlying, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to truly connect with it. And so now I get very frustrated when people are so very unaware. Like,
when they're unconscious.
Yes. Yeah. And just like shallow, right? Like, and I don't mean that in like a negative way, but like, just like, when I ask you how you are, like, I want to know how you are. Like, I want to know things going on in your life. I want to know if you're struggling. I don't want you to be like, I'm good, thanks. And I want all conversations that I have to be, like you said, I hope you learned something from this podcast. Like, I want to either learn something from you or I want you to learn something from me. Like, I want to truly connect with you in every time we have a conversation. So yeah, that's been a huge thing that I've unraveled, is that this can be, and is it for everyone? I think it could be, but those people need to be prepared and ready and consenting to doing it, and to digging into themselves. So yeah.
I like that. I find in the last year, I've become more consciously aware of it. And I think the year before I was more unaware of it. And then more so in the last 2 years for sure. But I found that the living in alignment with much more of an intentional headspace, where or behaving in alignment where I have a lot more of an intentional headspace, being intentionality being the filter that I'm going through, is like, even if I'm scrolling, I'm like, why am I doing this? Or if I catch myself, I'll just like turn it off or something like that. Right. Just to kind of break that break that like string.
Mhm.
I've noticed that I've turned my life into much more of a all day meditation where I'm in much more of a flow, like a micro flow state, like not crazy where I'm doing something that's 4% more difficult or 4% out of my comfort zone, or even to the point where it has to go through a flow cycle where it's struggle and then release, then recovery, or then flow state and then recovery. I just kind of flow. I just kind of fall into this intentional way of being where even if I'm walking, I'm feeling what's underneath my feet.
Mhm.
If I feel the air like for a second, then I'll take an extra second to enjoy it.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think that it has created such a space of peace internally. And what I think that our internal world is just a reflection, or our external world is just a reflection of our internal being. So my internal being is like a harmonious hustle. It's just been smooth, effective, efficient, present, and that meditative kind of aspect, it has been supercharging a lot of aspects outside of
Mhm.
myself as well. And that's pretty cool. Do you have a day-to-day esque meditative headspace in that case?
I agree with you. Yeah, I've been able to fall into that awareness, and have it be definitely spaces of flow. Um, I think it comes down to like a lot of people struggle getting there because they don't even know what being in alignment, like you said, being in alignment, like most people don't even know what that means. They don't know what their core values. They've never sat and said, like, what is actually important to me? What are my core values? What does in alignment mean to me? Right. So if you don't know what's in alignment, you'll never know when you're out of alignment. Right. So I so many times, like when I sit with clients, or for myself, like I'm really sitting with like what is even like the starting point, what is in alignment, right? And how do I know if I'm dipping in and out of it? I think really understanding what your core values are, what being in alignment means. And I've really leaned into that word specifically, alignment, and like what that feels like in my body. I'm very like in touch with my feelings, and when I manifest something, if you're into human design or anything, I'm very much like in touch with my emotions, my feelings, and I like to have a connect and experience with a feeling, as opposed to like a tangible like thing or number or outcome. So when I manifest things, like I talk about like, okay, I know I'm successful when I feel this, or I know that I've reached this point when I am in flow, or I am feeling abundant, right? And yes, a lot of times that reflects an outside, like $10,000 in my bank account or whatever, but like, it's more of a feeling for me. So I very much can relate to slowing down, taking that extra breath, feeling the earth underneath my feet. Like I've gotten very in touch. And I feel like I was always like that. Like that's just been an inherent thing inside of me. And being more intentional with self-growth and breath work and meditation and more mindful movement. Like I used to be an intense CrossFitter, getting away from intense exercise and like really feeling what my body is doing. Just being out in nature, and definitely medicine work. Like all of those things have really like helped me hone into like actually experiencing life instead of just going through it. Right.
I like that. Actually experiencing life rather than just going through it. Yeah, I like that. I would definitely have found myself, if I were going back like 10 years, and if I was chatting with my younger self, I would definitely had a thought there, and it kind of like got away from me for a second there. What was that line that you just said that I really liked, that I also repeated, but I also forgot? So I think I had a cool thought on that one.
actually experiencing life instead of just going through it. I think is what I said.
Right. So yes, I would have went back in time and said, hey, younger Kyle, experience life rather than trying to rush to get to the end.
Mm-hmm.
Or something along those lines. I find that it's kind of interesting. We're in this really cool point in history where we have the accessibility of so many things in order to be able to prolong our life. And I think that most of the stuff that we are watching or listening to in all aspects are kind of aiming towards how to live longer or how to live as long as you can. There's like Brian Johnson, who's reversing his biological age. So chronologically, he's in his 50s, but biologically, he's in his early 20s kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then you have other folks that are wanting to live to 145 or 144. My personal goal is 125. But at the same time, I guess, or maybe this could be changing then if we're chatting about it, but teaching and learning that ability to experience life as it is the gift that we could easily have not had at some point in time. If our parents were 5 minutes off in either direction, then we wouldn't exist. And so I think it's interesting where we're trying to push to see how long we can live for, but in the pursuit of living longer, we're not living.
Well, I was just going to ask you, so if you lived to 89 and you lived every day of your life to its fullest, whatever that meant in that day, right? Like, would you be okay dying at 89 as opposed to 125? And I think that that's what we're pushing. Like, why do you want to live to 145? Like, what does that do for your life? And we're like just keeping people alive and they're not truly thriving. Like, I'd rather thrive to 90 or 80 or, like even 75. Like, yeah, that sounds young, but like, I don't know. I'd rather really enjoy my life and show up and be present and like have this great work-life balance and like just be fucking happy and live to 80 than live to 125. And like the last 40 years of my life, I'm just not doing that. Or maybe I never have, like maybe I never have. So, no. As soon as I get crazy and I'm a burden, like fucking burn me and throw me in the ocean.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
Don't put me on a machine. Like, no way.
I'm pretty similar too, where if I was in a state where I was not like enjoying my time to the best of my ability at that point in time, I wouldn't really want to burden as well. And then I also think it's interesting because then there's also some cases where it's like, I think this is going to be an interesting one. I think in some cases there's folks that want to genuinely keep their loved ones kicking, right? That's the main point. But I find that the intentionality is less about the person kicking and more about the resistance to experiencing a reality that is counter to the one that they're existing. So it's trying to like hold on to that last little remnants of what someone's life has been in order to make the subjective person feel good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want people to do that for me either.
No. And I've watched a few people in my life like make choices at the end of someone's life that were in their interest as opposed to the person that's actually dying, because out of fear or holding on or whatever that looks like. But no, I don't want that.
Yeah. Well, on a lighter note,
From mushrooms to death.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, you know what? That's kind of a normal. That's a normal. Now that you kind of put the actual outline of what the trajectory's been, it actually makes sense. It makes sense. I actually had a big chat with a buddy of mine, Caleb, and we had almost a whole podcast just talking about death and kicking the bucket. And you know what? Yeah. What are you the most excited about when it comes to death, I suppose? Let's turn our like darker, still same topic. We'll flip it over to see what pops up into the mind.
I honestly don't think about death very often in either a positive or a negative way. It's just not something that is forefront in my mind. I feel like I have become more comfortable with the idea of my death since like becoming more intentional with my life and knowing that like I am putting into each day what I want to be putting in. I'm hoping that I can be excited on my deathbed that I have continued to raise awesome humans, and I hope to leave them with knowledge. Like we're homeschooling our girls or alternatively educating them and doing that on purpose. And I hope to own land. I hope to do like, this is a big thing that I would like to do different than my parents, is leave my kids with something, the next thing that like that, whether it's the knowledge, the skill set, the land, the, you know, the business, whatever, so that they are like on a trajectory to move forward in their own life. So what am I excited about? I hope people have a big ass fucking party when I die. Like, I don't want any tears. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I want people to enjoy me now and not cry about me later.
Fair enough.
You know?
Yeah. I like that. I think I've said that a couple of times as well for myself is, just have a wake and just like cremate me. And I don't know.
Yeah. Do not put my body in a coffin and put makeup on me that I didn't wear in real life. And, you know, just like, I don't know. I want to look into some of those other like alternative things, because I was always like, cremate me, but I think that that's not great for the environment either. So now there's like, you can become a tree, or you can, you know, like put me back into the earth, like somehow let me be food for pigs. I don't care, you know, like whatever.
I think the tree one is really cool. And another one that I heard that was pretty sweet is fireworks.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. I hope that my kids specifically can revel in the idea of me like moving on. I hope they're like super grateful for the time that we had together, and that they're not like, I hope it doesn't, I see so many people that like a death in their family like halts their life, and that's not what the person would want, you know, like that can't be what the person would have wanted, you know? So I hope that they like are grateful to have had me and okay with letting me go, and knowing that I'm going to be up there haunting their asses anyway. So be fine.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. My thoughts are really quick one on it, but I think that if we take it outside of our own lifespan and then think of it in the timeline of when the universe began to now, like how we've experienced it, we've experienced more non-existence than existence. So it's just going back to a previous state where being alive is the weird thing.
Yeah.
Being not alive is normal.
Yeah. I love that. And going back to my my first medicine ceremony, since I've connected with my grandmother every time I've done medicine.
Ooh.
And I was close with her when growing up, but I was relatively young when she died. And I don't think we got truly into like, the conversations I've had with her on mushrooms are way different than the ones I was having with her in real life, you know, or in like earth life. So that part excites me too, is like being able to be this spiritual guide once I'm gone, right? Like being able, whether it's for my kids, my grandkids, other people, like, because I didn't know what that meant. Like people are like, who are your spiritual guides? Call in your guides. And I'm like, oh, I don't fucking know what that means. Like I was not connected in that way. Right. And the first person that came to mind was my maternal grandmother. And I was like, all right, grandma, hey, let's go. I'm taking some MDMA and let's see what happens. I also specifically called her in because a lot of the conditioning, a lot of what I was working on specifically in that ceremony was from that bloodline, right? Was from the women coming down. So she was a big part of that. So I think that's a cool thing too, that I haven't really thought about until this conversation. But that I'm going to be a badass spiritual guide one day.
Yeah, you'll just come back as like an Obi-Wan, just like in the Force. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be really cool. So whereabouts do you see your coaching going? How is it that you want to help people?
So I have two separate paths with my coaching, but they come together for sure. I've narrowed down, so I have fitness, wellness, women's health, all kinds of like background. Obviously done in lifted. I've done a lot with mindset. I've done a lot with language. So on the individual side, I love working, and I've honed in on women. I really do enjoy working with women. Will work with men, but women is kind of where I'm at. I love this mindset work. I love this embodiment work. I love taking a story, taking a self-limiting belief and flipping it on its head and letting your body truly like feel and believe something different. So I love that on like a one-on-one side. And then I'm part of a project called the Evolve Women Project. And that's where we're doing group work. Women are coming together in community. We're doing retreats. We have an online program. It's just been incredible to watch. Like I've unraveled a lot of my beliefs around women. Even being a woman, I had a lot around like what it meant to be a woman, what it meant to like actually trust other women, actually like commune with other women, and without competition, without comparison, without judgment. So this work has been just as much for me as it has been for our clients that we've worked with. And just having women in the same room, like being vulnerable and open and holding that space for each other is just, it's so magical. So yeah, we're doing big things in 2024. We're up leveling our program. We got a few retreats happening. Our retreats have been local. So I'm New York, one of my partners, Jersey, and one is New Hampshire. And we have a retreat center in Pennsylvania that we've been working with that's been beautiful. And we're talking about like, where's the next like iteration of what our retreats could look like? Is it Sedona? Is it Costa Rica? Is it Florida? Is it, whatever.
Someplace hot.
Someplace a little that brings a little, the retreat center in Pennsylvania is magical. Like it's beautiful. And can we add some palm trees in there? Maybe. So yeah. And then on the personal coaching side, I am launching some different packages in January. And then I'm actually going to do a year-long mentorship where we jump on a call once a week for a whole year. And we can move through very, in-depth things as far as, we talked about being in alignment and, beliefs and core values, like taking them through that, I can also read human design charts. So we're looking at like human design, who you are, what your innate personality is, how that plays into habit building and, the choices you make in your life. And then it's going to be a year of just sitting in week to week and just totally transforming anything you want in your life, whether it's, beliefs, mindset, stories. I've actually helped a bunch of people lately professionally. So talking, like having them, I just sat with a client who is transitioning from being a stay-at-home mom for the last few years back into the corporate world. And that's been really cool. I've done that a few times now with some different clients where they're like had some strong self-limiting beliefs that like they didn't know how to get back into working. And I'm like, oh, you got it, you know it, you know. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
I'm very excited about the next iteration of my coaching this coming year.
That's pretty sweet. Would you be able to touch on human design a little bit? Because I'm unfamiliar with it.
You are, oh yeah, sure. So human design, I like to refer to as like a user manual for yourself. So you take birth date, birthplace, birth time, and it spits out a chart. And if you've ever done any astrological readings, like there might be some similar points. I like human design because I think it is a kind of full gamut of like who you are, and what your natural tendencies are. And then you can work, you know, up or down from there, right? You can say like, this is, you know, what's coming in. Does this serve me? Do I like this? Do I want to play this up? Do I want to, you know, create boundaries around this? But there are different types. There's different profiles. It's very in depth. So, and then there's all different gates and channels and things that you're looking at, but it'll give you a little bit of insight into who you are, your natural tendencies, how you like to eat, what like different environments that you like. So yeah, I highly recommend it. I got mine read and I was like, oh my God, that's like spot on.
I'll have to get my human design read at some point. That's
Let
pretty
me
sweet.
know. I got you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, it'd be really cool. I think well, at least for myself, I've utilized personality tests to kind of not as a way of, or just for myself, not for my clients, but it'd be kind of cool with clients too. But but it's been a way of kind of pretty much monitoring progress, because I get to see, because each year I'll do a personality test and I'll use the same one, and then I'll have a different kind of archetype that pops up. And I thought I've noticed that really cool change up with the archetype and seeing how it's been with the archetype and seeing how I've been fitting into that particular archetype and why for that duration of time. I can look at the year and be like, oh yeah, no, I understand why this year I would be the commander archetype. And I read the personality traits and the characteristics and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's really cool to be able to have that information just as more information. Like if you can categorize the information and the data in a way that's constructive, even if it's someone that has like an astrological sign, let's say, or it could be numerology as well. I think having a little bit of insight into, I think having a little bit of insight into a couple little things, taking each as like an observer standpoint rather than this is it. This is my life. This is why I am doing the things that I am doing. No, it's like, no. This is just like a little bit more insight into a deeper state of being. And I found that to be really neat and helpful into understanding how I am either how I'm in alignment or misaligned with my overall vision.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's been huge. I actually saw a meme on Instagram. I think it was, if you're into like astrological readings or human design or personality tests, like you were likely misunderstood as a child and you're trying to like figure out who you are now. And I'm like, shit, like that lands.
Yeah.
So and coming more into understanding, like I truly was misunderstood as a child. I still am. Like my parents don't get me. I'm the black sheep, of my family. And I'm proud of that now. But so yes, it's been a lot to learn about myself, but I also think it's been great to learn about other people in my life. So to be able to do different things. And before we hit record, we were talking about Gretchen Rubin, and I highly recommend the 4 Tendencies as a quick and easy, like down and dirty little personality test. And that talks about your tendency when it comes to making decisions or meeting expectations. And that to me has been a great one too, to especially learn about myself, my family, my kids, my husband, because there's specific ways that you would want to interact with the different tendencies. So yeah, highly recommend that one as well.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I wrote down the name there. Gretchen Rubin. Four tendencies.
4 tendencies. Yep.
That's cool. I've been noticing a lot more things. Not a lot more things, but I've just been paying more attention just to the numbers. And I've been finding that to be a fun little just thing to keep at the forefront of my mind. And the last thing that was a 4 for something I'll check out was, it was actually, if something pops up more than once, then I'm going to make sure that I look into it. Otherwise, it's just an open loop and not a closed loop. And I like to close as many loops as possible.
Yeah.
But it was The 4 Agreements by
that's
Miguel
a great
Ruiz.
one.
That one was really cool. And it was because I got another book, the Book of the Shaman by Jose Ruiz. Jose? Yeah, it was Jose Ruiz. Yeah. And that one was really cool. I learned a lot in there. And then Kendra told me about the 4 Agreements. And then I heard the 4 Agreements somewhere else as well. And then that's when I was like, okay,
yeah,
I'm just gonna listen to it, because pretty much all audiobooks are on YouTube now. Like, you can go in and then increase the speed and check it out. And it was cool. I really like it. It was I forget most of them, but I know that be impeccable with your word.
Yeah.
Do your best. That's 2 of them. I'm 50% there. Be impeccable with your word. Do your best. And I forgot the other 2. But I like it when things just seem to have those cosmic coincidences and synchronicities, where it's like, oh, 4. Okay, I'm gonna check that one out. 4 tendencies. Okay, I'll check that out. See if there's something to it.
Yeah, I love it.
I've just been a little bit more aware of that kind of stuff. It's been kind of cool.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Where was I going to go with that one? I did have a thought, but it kind of fluttered away for a second there. But nonetheless, going before the final 2 questions. I have a final question before the final 2 questions. That way I can really make it so I get all of them in. But is there anything that has to be said that hasn't been said yet?
I feel good. I feel complete. This has been a cool conversation.
Sick.
Yeah.
Feeling complete. That's good. I'm glad you feel complete. That was a good one. So, you excited for the last 2 questions? I am.
I've been.
So, thankfully, we were talking about death earlier. So, you're on your deathbed. All right. Going to set the context. You're surrounded by the people you care for on the crazy cool retreat land that you've accumulated over time. Nothing, this podcast doesn't exist. Nothing exists. You just have what your final words are. What is the piece of advice that you want to pass on?
Oh. The first thing that came to me was embrace it all. What I mean by that is, like, feel it all, live it all, accept it all, be curious of it all, like, embrace it all, the good, the bad, the hard, because it's all there for a reason.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. And then the final question, the very best incarnation of you, the very best version of you is sitting next to you right now. What piece of advice does she have for you during this season of your life?
Oh, I love this. Have faith, trust that you're on the right path, that your hard work is paying off, and that your impact is making a difference.
Nice. That's good. Well, that's what I've got for you in today's episode. Where can people find you, Melissa?
I'm on Instagram mostly. mcurtis1030 is my personal, and then that's the easiest one. You can find links to the Evolve Woman Project, see lots of pictures of my kids and us doing fun stuff. And me in the ice bath mostly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, if you loved today's episode, please do me a favor right now. Please take a screenshot, share it on your Instagram stories, and tag me with my handle at DapperDudeKyle, along with at mcurtis1030. That is one of the ways that we grow. And until next time, keep up the kindness, and I hope your day treats you as good as you look.